Welcome to the Leadmore podcast. I'm your host, John T. Meyer. The Leadmore podcast is the show where we sit down with leaders of today to help inspire and create more leaders for tomorrow. Because I believe the world needs more leaders, and I hope you're ready to be the next one. Here in episode 60, can't believe that, I sit down with my friend, my colleague, and my business partner, Amy Moore. I've known Amy since 2010. She was the first employee we hired at my first company, Nine Clouds. We then kind of stumbled into this business and became business partners and co-founders in Lemonly. I've been through so many ups and downs, and you're going to hear a lot of that in this episode. It's a pretty special one, actually. I ask Amy some questions. We talk about things we've never even talked about, and we do that for the first time here on tape, on the record. So it's fun. We talk about the origin story of Lemonly. I asked her, in the spirit of leadership, right? In this show, we talk about leadership of people. We talk about how do you brand a company as a leader, right? So we tried to make Lemonly a leader in our field. You know, the home of the world's best infographics. We talk about how she thought about that and how we executed that. You'll also hear I ask her, first time I ever asked her this, what did you think when I first came to the table and told you I was thinking about selling the company? So you'll hear that answer. You'll hear about her favorite Lemonly project that she's ever created, how we designed the culture, and it was a really special conversation for me. And I think you'll enjoy sitting sort of as a fly on the wall with my conversation with my business partner, Amy Moore, here on the Leadmore podcast. Take a listen. Welcome to another edition of the Leadmore podcast. I am here with my friend, my business partner, Amy Moore. Sorry.
Oh, you have to cut that out. Dang it. Already in edit.
Take two already. It's so hard when I've called you by your last name.
I
for
still
so
go
long.
by Colgan. Most of my automatic, delivers and stuff still go by Colgan. So it's
and
a
you
slow
still
trend.
haven't officially done it yet.
I have not.
Because we joked that would be a really good startup idea for how complicated it is. I know my wife had felt the same way.
Yeah. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
So.
And in hindsight, she went Pearson Meyer. Probably would have been easier just to be Pearson, because then you do both and you're kind of stuck in between both worlds.
That's true.
Anyway, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
I'm excited
thanks
to
for
have
having
you.
me.
It's a long time coming, and Amy, of course, is my business partner at Lemonly, longtime friend, and I thought it'd be a great time to have you on because Lemonly is going to turn 10 years old in like 2 weeks.
Yep.
So what were you doing 10 years ago? What was your life like?
Oh, man. Okay, so 10 years ago.
Did you get your cat about then?
I did. It was around this time, I think. I got a cat. It was a big grown-up move. I think I had finally just moved into my first apartment.
You just graduated? Or not even?
That was the year after. So yeah,
oh, no,
we were
we had 9 Clouds
in.
for 1 year in.
Yep. So I just moved downtown into my first apartment. It was literally a 6-foot kitchen, and I was so stoked that it was my own. Had a cat.
We once took a sales call with Disney in that apartment.
We did.
Which was pretty big time.
Yeah. And we thought we would have good Wi-Fi. Turns out we didn't, but startup problems. Working some crazy hours for Nine Clouds and Lemonly and just kind of figuring
2
out
jobs,
this world.
basically.
Yeah. And I think at the time even we might have been toying around with the idea of being called Lefty. So
yes. Yeah.
There's a couple weeks there. So yeah, that was about 10 years ago to the date.
Yeah, we hadn't settled quite yet on a name.
Yep.
So I want to do a little bit of the origin story of how we met, and then you can we'll see if it's become a myth or if you agree with it or not.
Sure.
So I'll try to keep it quick because I ramble on this one. But Scott and I, my brother, have a company called Nine Clouds. We are doing social media, marketing, online, digital stuff, a little bit, whatever people would pay us to do that was legal. We had a client in Brookings, our hometown, a bar restaurant, and they would each week. This is back when I don't even know if Facebook pages were just coming out. You still had people who would create their business as a person,
Mm-hmm.
first name bar, last name restaurant type of thing. And so we were like, you guys should be on Facebook and post drink specials. And so we would drive to Brookings. It's about an hour away from Sioux Falls. We would go to the bar, take a picture of a margarita, put it on Facebook, list the photo with the discount. They'd usually give us a free beer. We'd stop at my parents' house, have dinner, drive back home to Sioux Falls. And this was $200 a month. I think we were probably losing money on gas, not factoring our time, and realizing, hey, we should, get some leverage here. We should hire somebody. So we call Roxanne Lucchese, a professor at SDSU. We were like, who are your best students? You come in and interview. And I remember you were a double major,
Yep.
advertising and design. You're like,
yeah.
I'm actually more of a designer, but like I know how to use Facebook. And we think, perfect. Maybe she can like design some posters for us. And that's how you get hired.
Yeah.
Does that still seem accurate in your mind?
Yeah, that's pretty spot on.
We did something like where we were like, like 10 hours a week. And then by the second week, you were doing how many?
Yeah, I think within the first couple of weeks, it had already escalated to 20. And by the time graduation rolled around, I was doing like 30 hours of work a
While
week.
you were like finishing finals and all that stuff.
Finals and my senior portfolio stuff. And yeah.
You've alluded to, but I don't think you've ever truly told me like probably how much you were working then.
A lot. I still had a job at the coffee shop on campus too.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I was pretty tired by then. I was ready to like be done with school. So.
And to your credit, you never hesitated at like we started selling websites. We started selling.
The Bagel Boy or Bagel. It was a bagel shop in Brookings.
Tons of stuff. Yeah, Bagel Works. I don't remember what.
I think I was overly confident. Yeah.
We were always just like, you can do this, right? And you're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I Googled a lot you guys didn't know about, but yeah, we figured it out.
So from the beginning, we always had a lot of trust in you, and you've, of course, earned that and deserved it. And then we're sort of, you're just kind of along for this weird ride of us trying to build a company for about a year. And we have this media company, which I'm probably one of those entrepreneurs that always thinks my ideas were right, just maybe not the right timing. And so, now it's like it really feels no different than like the Sioux Falls business, right? Like Jody's website. But we were an online media company, something between the Argus and between like Kello. And we started making infographics. Do you remember what your first one was?
First one was, and I'm going to botch the word, but it's like it's vuvuzelas. Like how do you pronounce it?
World Cup.
Yeah.
South
it was
Africa.
It was the noise, how we track like the noise for different games and like during the game, how loud it got.
Because people remember that was like a big story, how annoying they were.
Yeah.
You'd watch the games and just be like this hissing, buzzing noise.
Yeah.
And so we like visualized that?
Yeah, we just made a bar chart and then, threw some really tacky gradients on the bar chart and added some background images. And I think I spent 20 minutes on it, but it got a lot of traction. So we're like, oh, that's cool. Like, what else can you do? And I think we did Twilight. We did.
Yes. Because at that time, like a lot of infographics were, I think of like USA Today, like there's a story and then in the corner would be like one chart or one graph.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you saw more like the narrative style? Of course, like what we do now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. They started to get longer as we started to get more ideas and, even planning them more than a day ahead. I think most of them, most of the post ones were, I'd make them between like 5 and 8 in the morning and then we'd like post it in the morning and go that way. But I do remember one that was like
5 to 8 in the morning. Do you get up and make them?
Yeah.
Like before your
Jesus. Before my day job. Kept me busy, man.
Sorry.
No, it was fun. I loved doing them. That was the fun part. I was like, ooh, I'm going to do some Googling and like, we're going to make this work. But there was one that was really fun. It was about traffic, not to get political, but it was Christy Nome versus Stephanie Herseth, like
Sandlin,
driving
former
records.
guest of the show.
Yeah. And so like having some
they both
of that
had
data.
a little bit of a checkered
They did.
Speeding tickets, a couple of violations.
Yeah, that one was kind of fun where you're starting to kind of do a little bit more data digging and
you wrapped it in like a Mario Kart theme,
I put their heads on Mario Karts. That one was kind of fun. We did some stuff around like events, like even Cinco de Mayo. So they started to get longer and like a little bit more like sections and stories. And then the Zarly one was kind of like our really...
And so I think, like I said, Lemonly will turn 10 here in August, but in about maybe June, we made a true, like what we would consider kind of a Lemonly infographic for a startup called Zarly. Mm-hmm. And talk about starting off on the top. That one made it to TechCrunch, the homepage of TechCrunch, and got, I don't know, maybe 1 million page views.
Yeah, that one was pretty cool. Actually, I was trying to think of that. I was like, what was the first, okay, so it was Zarly. And I do remember there was a Slack, and I don't know if you remember this, and we were trying to pitch, like, what else can we do for this client? Because they were, pretty hot to trot. And we're like, oh, we could do stickers. We can help them with the postcards, all this stuff. And I said, oh, we can make them an infographic. And you asked me if we were good enough to make an infographic for them. And I had
Were you offended?
A little bit. I was like, well, I need like a day or two to work on it, but I think we could like sell these. And you're like, okay. And then like they finally like, okay, let's do one. And so it worked out.
I mean, it sounds, hearing it, like putting it down on tape, sounds ridiculous, but that's more or less how Lemonly was started.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like you throw this idea and I figure out how to sell it and of course, we did it.
Yeah, it worked.
And then we just kept doing that again and again.
For a
And I
decade.
think the Argus leader called, and then I remember, I don't know how many projects we did that. We started in August, but by December we made our first hire, designer all the way over in Serbia. By March, we hired Ashton, who's now been here for almost a decade. And then off we went.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of crazy.
it is pretty crazy. And I know this is the question all designers kind of roll their eyes at. When you look back at those early ones, is there anything that you like about them? I mean, I know you probably would laugh at that work, but
I mean,
like, do you feel like you had, because like we said, you'd already done websites, you had done logos. Like, what about infographics do you feel like was right for you?
I loved, and especially in the early days, like we were doing the concepting, the copywriting, the design, like even the research. Like we spent a lot of time doing industry research for like the Zarly series, or we did some about like kind of digital like download speeds across the world for like a gaming company. We had to find
Pando.
the Pando stuff, which, and it's fun to put a fun spin on it. So we had like a League of Legends sort of vibe on it.
Yes.
And so thinking about those, that we did all that and we turned those around in like 2 days, you just had to have your all engines fired all the time. And I think as like a young designer and just like person in that marketing space, like that's really exciting to be able to just like work that quickly and keep stretching yourself and, just moving on to the next thing and growing that way. So
that reminds me of, hopefully the IRS doesn't listen to the Leadmore podcast, but if a client needed one, because back then they were very journalistic. It was like, we have this thing, like, we want to put it on our blog tomorrow. And I'd be like, whoa, 24-hour turnaround? Like, that's going to cost you like $500 rush fee.
Yep.
And I think we did one with like Yahoo, or was it HP, or like something like that real early.
Yeah.
And so I literally just turned around and wrote you a check for $500, just flat fee. And then you probably didn't sleep, and we delivered it the next day.
Yeah. It worked.
It's no taxes were paid on that compensation, but certainly a company was built with that scrappiness.
Yeah.
And I wanted to tell that story because I think to entrepreneurs who listen to this show, or people who want to start a company, I think we put a lot of pressure on this. Have to have the perfect idea for the perfect marketplace and the right time. And we laugh about the origin of Lemonly, but it really was us sort of adapting to and solving a problem versus us, like, there was no whiteboard session where you and I like said, this is what it's going to look like in 10 years.
Yeah, there was a void and skill sets, and we enjoyed it. So yeah,
right time, right place, right people.
Yeah,
off we went.
Yeah.
Do you think, similar to that, I mean, we have played very different roles, and so I think people always talk about the importance of co-founders. Find someone who like balances your strengths and your weaknesses, and and in a way, we were sort of like accidental co-founders because we had hired you to be an employee. But then we stumbled into Lemonly, and then I recognized, like, this thing doesn't exist without you, so we made you a co-founder. How do you think we balance each other out well?
I think, and I kind of go back to our DISC assessment, because I think both of us are yellow, but you, I go to the colors, obviously. So you're a high I, but you also skew like slightly dumb, where I'm a steady, like I go like green yellow. So in that sense, like we both kind of like to like live in the clouds and like ideate and like, I think our lemon made like concept was like developed over a happy hour, and that turned into a 6-month iteration.
That idea exists today in the world too.
It does,
like, it was going to be a kit to how to, like, if parents wanted their kids to learn entrepreneurship, we were really hot on that for
we had a
week.
logo and like a outline and everything. But yeah, I think we both like love that space of like dreaming and ideating and like, okay, like that fearlessness of like, we can do it. And then you kind of go into more, I think, like authoritative space of like, okay, like how do we talk about it? Like, what can I do? And like kind of put the pieces in order, where I like to like get my hands dirty and like go make it.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of like live in that space and then go our separate ways. And I think that served us pretty well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And one thing I've always loved about you is you never rolled your eyes at any of my crazy ideas, because you were willing to like also have crazy ideas.
Like, we could figure it out, but
So, yeah, and I think in a way that's another great part of our origin story is sort of people spend a lot of time kind of almost like matchmaking an entrepreneur or co-founders, and we were sort of accidental.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would have picked a different one in hindsight.
Yeah. Oh,
so.
Thank you.
One what do you think we did as you look back at now we hit 10 years? I think you and I are supposed to write a blog post about our 10-year from the content team.
Yep.
What do you think we did right? Like as you look back, even if it was maybe accidental, but like as you think back to a decade of this company, what do we get right?
I think from the get-go, we were dedicated to, I think, excellence and innovation in whatever sense that meant. So, adapting to not only the talent at the table, so as we grew as a company, like what else can we bring to the table, but our clients' needs. So we had this vision in mind, but I don't think we were scared to tweak and pivot along the way. And I think that served Lemonly really well. Obviously, I think the culture, that, making it culture first is something that, so many companies are still trying to figure out. And the fact that I think it happened not only from like a lot of your leadership, but bringing the right people to the table and allowing them to contribute to the culture. So it became like this, ever-growing thing that is almost bigger than you or myself, So
100%.
it's something that can't be taken away like when you walk out the door,
Yeah, there's so many people who left their stamp or still are on the culture.
And allowing individual contribution like to the company culture on that scale, I think is something that a lot of companies are envious of because they just don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. It's too structured and rigid, and I think that flexibility as a company has allowed us to kind of build the culture that way.
Yeah, and I think I always say that like the culture is really built from the people, kind of from the ground up, but certainly protected or held by the leaders. And I think there's a lot of you look at a lot of companies and they really do match the characteristics of the co-founders. And so I feel like our scrappiness, our resourcefulness, our ability to do whatever it takes definitely comes from you.
Yeah.
But maybe some of our ability to, tell a story or like put some pizzazz to it or flair like comes maybe from me. And so I think that worked out, really well too.
Yeah.
I didn't put this on the pre-list of questions. Anything you think we did wrong that you wish could do a redo?
Well, obviously the first version of our logo, I would have made it better. To be fair, I did it in a day.
And we still use that for 3 years?
Yeah. I mean, it had legs. It just so happened to be like the trendiest font for like the next 3 years. Like I found it on a website and then turns out everybody else liked it too.
You were just early.
Yeah, I was ahead of my time.
I think about why we had the .ly for so long and didn't just go right for the .com.
We weren't ready to commit to that much money.
Yeah, which is $1,000. I think we bought it for you.
Scrappiness. No, I don't think like big regrets because to the point of like culture and, that pursuit of excellence, I think we've always learned from our mistakes. And I don't think that we would be the same company that we are right now if we hadn't like fudged up here and there. Like there are some instances that maybe we could have like, if we could go back and, bring like your 10 years of being a CEO or creative director to the table, like would I have? Yes. But I mean, you don't grow and get to the point you are now if you don't have some of those mistakes that you could look back on and be like, let's do better next time.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I've ever asked you this question, and I've met your family, but not too frequently. At what point did they think that maybe this was like a real thing? Like when you were telling them like, hey, I'm a co-founder of this business, were they kind of like, okay, that's nice, honey?
That's nice, honey. Yeah.
like when did they think like, oh shit, like
it
this thing is
Disney
actually
one.
Like legit?
Yeah. I think when I said we had that first call with Disney, I came home the next time and pretty much everybody in my network knew that we were working with Disney. I was like, hey, thanks parents. This was kind
of bragging about you?
Yeah. I was like, I was supposed to like not really talk about
There's
it.
There's maybe an NDA.
Yeah. I was like, but thanks for spreading the word. Yeah, I would say that one because that's,
And how about like your siblings? Same?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they maybe didn't quite realize when they finally came to like see like The Office. I think that was for them.
Sure.
Like
the current office, probably.
Oh shit, yeah. Like wow, like you're in charge of stuff, aren't
you're
you?
Pretty
I was
big
like,
time.
well, yeah. I work hard, I make things. So yeah, I would say those two instances were probably like more realization because they aren't involved. They don't come to Sioux Falls very often.
Yeah. We always joke about trying to explain to our parents what we do, but it was so accidental that I'm sure they were kind of like, that's cool, and not really knowing what you actually built.
Good job, honey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this show's about leadership. Certainly you are one, and we are together. But I wanted to ask you about the sort of the branding of leadership. So how do you, as a designer, as a creative person, thinking about making a brand or a person or an idea kind of like a category leader? And so what I mean is like, we now probably, for a few years now, we've said, we're probably one of two or three of the companies that really started the modern kind of web infographic, right? Where it went from just that pie chart in the corner of a newspaper to this story.
Yep.
And sort of the South Dakota humbleness, it took us a while to maybe own that. But now when you walk through the door, right, it says home of the world's best infographics. And I remember when I asked you to make that sticker, we were a little like, I
cringed a little.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. I was like,
and then
but are we really?
I told you it was more of like it's just as much of like an internal comms message, right? For people who walk through the door, meaning the team.
Yeah.
But how do you think of leadership in terms of like, because we are, right? We do like, we lead in this category of visual storytelling. And how do you think you pulled that off?
Yeah, I think when you talk about like brands as leaders, I think it comes down to brands that are changing the industry at like just the status quo. Like people now have a bar to reach or strive towards, whether that's, and you can look at that as like individuals, people that are changing the game and raising the bar for that entire industry or category or sport or,
Sure.
When you think about it that way, when you think about the word infographic 10 years ago, it was a pie chart that you could put in the newspaper or something maybe in the, New York Times that had a couple things here. But when you think about infographics now, like these are immersive stories that can have audio, motion, top-notch journalism, as well as data viz. So I think that, there's a lot of great infographics out there made by other industries, but we've also helped raise that bar for that space. So when you Google the word infographics, it's better than it was 10 years ago, and we are a key player in that.
Yeah. And is there anything like even as subtle as like, say, the rebrand when you got to redo the logo or, and this gets into whole like marketing, communications, blog content, speaking, all that. But like, was there something you did that you think like is the goal to, do you try to look more official and like a leader, or actually do you try to zag and be like our own kind of lemonliness and that makes us a leader? Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you're like trying to brand a company as a leader, like visually communicate that, like how do you do it? I think there's a lot of different components that come into it. Like you can look as slick as possible, but if your content and your work doesn't have legs, then it falls flat. It's like, cool, you have a nice website.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of making sure that you are a little bit of that blue ocean space. You can't fall into the category of everybody else. You do have to distinguish yourself visually.
Yeah.
And I think Lemonly's done that by making sure that we do have that Lemonly personality behind our communications as well. So the work is amazing, obviously, but when you get on the phone with you or Jade, you get that Lemonliness, and that's part of the brand. Or when you go to our website, you understand like we're unique for this reason. And that's a lot of different design aesthetics that can go into, but it's kind of like, what's that thing that makes this company special, and make sure you can communicate it, whether it's like through color, type, logo, like all those things are, elements, but they all have to work together and they have to be talking to each other.
Well, I think historically, as companies do kind of become leaders, they get safer and like their logo gets blue and like
they
more
use
basic. and whereas I think, not saying that we're this global brand by any means, but like we are a leader in our space and we continue to just kind of be who we are. Yeah.
I think that level of authenticity, and I would agree to that point that sometimes brands are starting to move away from showing their own personality, especially in like the marketing space of they just want to showcase the portfolio, where you get a little bit of both when you come to our website.
Yeah.
You understand who we are, but also what we bring to the table. And I think that's probably one of our uniques as well.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing I think that you helped me realize, we've created probably close to or over 4,000 pieces of visual content. I don't know how many you've made. I'd say at least 10%, probably more. I've made zero as like a owner of a design company who doesn't know how to use Photoshop. Of course, my joke, but you helped me realize that design can be like a capital D, and and that we can design the way the office works, design the way, as you referenced, the phone call, even the way you fill out the form, and then book a call with Lemonly. And that really kind of set me on fire, feeling like I could be a designer in that sense.
Yeah, I always joked that, maybe we change everybody's titles to designer at Lemonly. It was a terrible idea.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody is you're a
It's a good startup concept. Yeah.
Business development designer,
Sure.
But it's it's confusing. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes
the kernel
us
of that
special.
idea was right.
Yeah.
And I feel like we established nobody gets told not to give feedback or input.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, you're not a designer, so don't give us any critique on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to ask you, because we've talked a big part about this show, especially this year, is change. And I think people going through change on the heels of the pandemic, still in the pandemic, thinking about whether it be career change or life change or leadership change. Obviously, we went through a big change, or are going through, with selling the company. And so I don't remember the first time, but I want to say probably about January of 2020, I maybe floated the idea to you. Or was it earlier?
It was earlier. And honestly, I think we've had several conversations all the way back to 3 years ago of what if. But I think the first time that when we first started talking, and you had been talking with some resources about what the options or process or experience would look like, that's when I knew that it wasn't just an idea anymore.
Sure.
And I want to say
because we would joke about Disney will acquire us, or Marriott,
or
whatever.
if it's a bad week, bad day, it's kind of is this, you start to kind of just vent and throw those ideas. I'm what if it's time?
Yeah.
But I think it was probably end of 19, beginning of 20 when I knew you were pretty serious about it.
And the question I wanted to ask, is how did that make you feel?
I mean, to be honest, I knew you were serious, but I also know that sometimes you're not ready to go yet. So
Sure.
I was like, okay, we're gonna have
Let's
to
wait them out.
yeah, let's wait out this and see how it feels. But then that was probably the first time that I had to start thinking about it. If there was a scenario that really was gonna be pursued within that calendar year, how did I feel about it?
Yeah. Yep.
So that was probably really the first time I really thought about it for myself.
Yeah. And this is maybe we're going through co-founder therapy here, talking about this for the first time.
Yeah, let's put it on the internet the first time we talk about it.
I feel this is an example of how we match well. Is I sort of led those conversations while you kept focused on the work and kind of bringing back the updates to you as we were talking to several players. But I recognized, I don't remember when, maybe summer, it seemed like a switch flipped to you, where you went from maybe I'm not sure about this, to maybe this could be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it was when we started understanding what the options on the table were, and just figuring out from my perspective, what if I had to choose the options, that I would be able to contribute to. So,
Sure.
You could go, I could have bought you out, or
Sure.
we could have brought in another partner that would take over your role, or we could, do a partial acquisition. We could do a total acquisition. What are the things that made me feel comfortable, not only as if I were to stay within the company, but also what was the best thing I could do for the team? What could be the last thing I could give to them as an owner to set them
That's
up
a good way to put
and make sure that Lemonly doesn't die when we're not the owners anymore.
Yeah.
So when those options started to align, that's when I felt more at ease with the directions and the conversations we were having.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I feel like we did do that, and then we communicated that back to the team as far as explaining why we made the decision and why now. And because I feel like just as much as the what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of the unlikeliness of you and I starting this company together that would work with the top global brands. I also never really thought about you and I selling this company in our early 30s, right?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that now?
I mean, I'm excited for the next chapter of Lemonly. I think it was a weird time to sell a company. I would say that for sure. You didn't really get to celebrate it in the way that we probably would have, and we didn't really get to
because of the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic, yeah. Like we signed our final we signed every single document like remotely from our homes.
Yeah. I was in Arizona over the holidays.
Yeah, I think I was like signing papers and then just like hopped in my car and went to go work on our rental house. Like it was like very anticlimactic and something that you cared about so deeply and invested so much of yourself into. Like I think there's a little bit of sense of mourning that we didn't get to celebrate it the way that, we were aligned and felt good and felt very strongly that this was the best decision for Lemonly as a company and for the people that make it. But you didn't get to really like...
There's no popping bottles of champagne.
Yeah. It just felt...
not together.
It felt very like, okay, that's done,
Yeah. I remember you asked Paul, our attorney, like, there's so many DocuSigns, I don't know, 12, 13 of them. Yeah. You were like, can you just tell me when it's the last one?
Yeah. Yeah. That one I got actually a little bit emotional because I realized like, it was just like a day of like signing a lot. I was working and like that whole 2 weeks was stressful and just like you're trying to do your day job while also like reading these very robust things that you don't fully understand and you're just asking for cliff notes, but you're also trying to make sure that, you're the one signing it, so you need to understand it. So he texted me, he's like, this is the last one, just so you know. And that one was actually a little hard, but then I was like, okay, I gotta get my Allison, your draft is coming, So it's very, It's
so 10 years later, things haven't changed for you.
Yeah. It just was like, I'm still me. But yeah, that was probably one of the hardest parts of the process was not feeling like we really got to celebrate it the way the experience of it wasn't as awesome.
But I think one thing that's cool is like with our situation that Lemonly's, going to be Lemonly, you will always get to be a co-founder of Lemonly, and still creative director of Lemonly. And so I think that's a cool, like maybe some of those you mentioned those weeks where you just want to like quit or give up. Some of the lows probably will be eliminated as some of the stresses of owning a business, but like, still get to do great work with great clients.
Yeah.
But that's good. What do you think in our space, as far as visual storytelling? We've seen, we've kind of innovated around the margins of like sticking true to what we do, like infographics, but rethinking the way they deliver, the way they look, clicking, animating. I'm just curious because you're a visionary creative person. What does a decade look like have you ever thought about that? Like, what could possibly Lemonly be making in this next chapter?
I would love to get into augmented reality. That would be obviously a lot of talent and team shift and capabilities, but we're getting there with the tools that we have available. It's getting closer and closer, and like that gap of, even when we talk about like low code, no code, you can build prototypes without hiring a developer these days. You can build a website with no code knowledge whatsoever. So that space of not being able to bridge these gaps is getting smaller, and I think in the next few years, we're going to see that. So how can you bring brand and visual storytelling into not only like you're kind of combining that digital and physical space. Like I love the idea of wayfinding, like using augmented reality to tell a story that you can choose your own journey. And so you're taking like these digital elements that maybe you would have like clicked to, choose this adventure. Can you bring that to a physical space and use our design skill sets to bring that to the table? I think that would be a really fun space to dive into.
And I think one thing you've always done well is sort of thought those 3, 4, 5, 6 steps ahead while also being practical of what like a client can use today.
Yeah.
Who would actually pay for this? How would they actually use it? Would a customer engage with it?
Yeah.
I think that's always been, really important as we think through, because we keep innovating, but I think on the year by year, it feels small. But as we look back from what we were doing, like when you talk about those post infographics, it's changed a ton.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's something you've always done well.
Oh, thank you.
What is your favorite infographic you've ever created? Your most favorite, I should say.
It's like making you pick a child, man. That's really hard. I would say I've always really enjoyed doing the 9/11 annual reports because they were our first dive into really like immersive infographics. So, we didn't really do really animated infographics at the time, but these were, microsites that had video content, audio content, animations, interactive things. So to me, that was an exciting space to go in, and we were making those back in, I think our first one was 2014.
14, okay.
Yeah. And so the fact that we're that far ahead on thinking about infographics in that space, and now it's so much more common for some of our work to look that way, but that was, I think that was a project that stood out to me. I always love the Marriott ones because you just get to experiment and play, but a lot of really fun ones.
Yeah. Any idea how many you have made, if you were to guess?
No.
Yeah, it's got to be
several hundred.
400 or 500, I bet.
Yeah.
So the last one I want to finish with, and then we'll do a little bit of rapid fire just about you. What we talked about sort of our dynamic, our origin story, our kind of co-founder match, how we balance each other out so well. As far as listeners listening, I'll be leaving at the end of the year. Your timeline is, whatever you want it to be. Planning on staying for now.
Yep.
So what will you miss about our working together?
Oh, our banter, for better or worse. I think Ashton would always get uneasy if we were like kind of ruffling each other's feathers, because she's more of a peacemaker in the group. So when it would be, in the co-working space and there's like three of us, and, you'd ask me what my favorite color is and I couldn't answer, and you'd,
that was one particular moment.
Scuff off, like it's, I think some of that I'll definitely miss. But yeah, I think just kind of the way that both of our brains work it's a lot of fun to just wrap ideas and kind of think about stuff. So,
well, I really don't. I really cringe at the phrase when people be like, "Oh, my work wife," right? Like, I just think that's really weird.
Yeah.
But like I've always kind of felt a little like brother sister. Like we've gone through so much highs and lows together. Probably didn't celebrate the highs enough. Probably didn't like communicate enough during the lows. Like just all these things. But like no one else can ever. I'll never be able to talk to anybody else about this journey like I could with you.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right. So just, I know that at least in Sioux Falls, between Lem and Lee, I'm sort of probably the more external, outward co-founder. So I want to ask a few questions about you just so people can learn more about you. I typically ask, these are kind of leader questions we ask to guests. So what's a book you recommend to people most often?
Oh, Harry Potter.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
No, there's a good one if you're looking for more like creative inspiration.
You can do Harry Potter. Like,
it
explains you've always been in the fantasy. I mean, one thing I was just talking to Nicholas, our intern, is like we have a lot of Lemon Lee designers who started as more like fine artists, and I always think about that with you is like you grew up wanting to be a painter.
Yeah.
And so like
I wanted to paint and animate for Disney, and those are some of my dream jobs.
So it makes sense that Harry Potter would, you'd connect with it so much.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm somebody that definitely I wish I could be somebody that reads more, educational productivity type books, but at the end of the day, like I like to dream and let my brain wander a little bit, so I do enjoy fantasy and watching TV and stuff like that.
And pretty cool that you can almost justify that as like a part of your job.
Yeah.
As creative director, right?
Yeah. I need my brain to kind of wander off for a little bit, and I'll come back with like, oh, that one scene in that one movie, like we could totally use that and like apply it to like a video. If you want something that's actually educational, The Best Story Wins. I did start that one. It's still around Pixar. It's talking from like the Pixar leadership about storytelling and some of that stuff.
Cool.
So that one, if you're not into fiction.
And this is another one. I think I have a guess, but I'm curious. I asked folks, leadership is stressful, and whether it be leading a company, a nonprofit, a family, whatever it might be, how do you unplug and sort of de-stress?
I like to plan a lot of trips.
Okay.
The planning is some of my favorite part is, kind of dreaming and thinking about the things that you want to do. I love to cook and
that's what I was thinking.
Experiment with flavors, and even as I like start to travel, like incorporating some of those flavors and kind of understanding those and some of the science behind it. Have
best trip ever?
Best trip ever? Gosh. Probably the trip I got engaged on. I feel like I need to say that one.
Kirsten's going to listen to this.
Yeah. No, that was really fun. We did Hungary, Austria, Germany, and then we actually flew out of Venice. So we did like 24 hours in Venice.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So we asked this to Lemonly interviews. I don't think I've ever asked you, though, because you didn't have to interview, at least not for Lemonly. What's your superpower? The thing you do best?
Honestly, I think it's designing. I mean, not in the sense of graphic designing, but putting pieces together, like structure out of chaos, mental Tetris. I think I've always been able to like put pieces together, whether it's like an operational thing or, designing physical spaces. I think just more of that mindset and, being able to adapt design skills to multiple scenarios and environments, I think has always been something I've been pretty good at.
I would say infographics was just one you decided to like settle on. I mean, I think you have some unique talents that apply to infographics, but like whether it be your cooking or the way you interior decorated this space, or you and your husband own 2 rental and they look beautiful. Like not sure if the deliverable or the canvas really matters for you.
Yeah,
like I think you can apply the skills.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the same thought process. I think it's just more of adapting the materials and the medium. And I think I've always kind of had that thought process. It's just kind of honing it in and figuring out what types of design I actually like doing.
Yeah, I agree. And then the last one, the leaders who have influenced or shaped you, like whether you've studied them or ones that you know well.
Okay. Well, I spent 10 years with a dude that's pretty smart. No, I think I do admire leaders that bring skill sets and attributes that I completely lack, but I think I've always gravitated and admired people that have a very strong, like authentic version of themselves, and they're bringing exactly what they're meant to do to the table, and that strive for excellence. I really admire, a lot of people, but for example, have you seen the first episode of Chef's Table?
I've cherry picked a couple of those. Is that the Swedish guy, or which one's the first one?
He's Italian, so Massimo.
Okay.
And I can't pronounce his last name. It's like Portore, something like that. He's such like excellence in his craft, and you think about like, oh, a chef's a chef.
Yeah.
He's revolutionizing, food waste and the idea of like food equity for the less fortunate, and bringing like art and culture to these environments and things like that. When I'm like, but you started as a chef and this is where you're at now, but he's just using the toolkit that he was given, but he's thinking outside the box. And when I watched that Netflix episode, I was always like, wow, that's when you talk about like scaling a craft.
Yeah.
Like that's such goals cool. Where he's like, he's excellent at what he does, but he's also pushing it for social good and making an impact.
It starts
around
just,
him.
It's putting not food in your tummy because you're hungry, but it could be so much more.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just, I want to, scale and be bigger, but it's more like I want to bring excellence with exactly what I have, what God gave me and what I worked hard for,
So does he have a restaurant?
He has lots of restaurants.
Have you eaten at any?
No, but I want to.
Okay, so it sounds like you should, yeah.
Yeah. Like
I'm going to bookmark that one.
I know. People like that, I think
cool.
have always inspired me.
Cool. Well, Amy, it's been fun to like look back and kind of go down memory lane a little bit, but also recognize, which I already know, of course, but as we sit here in our office, everything we've made, whether it be like as simple as the neon sign of Better Every Day, is this combination of you and I kind of taking this ball of clay and continuing to like mold it and bounce it back and forth and ping pong it with each other and make it better. And so it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah, thank you. Same.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, that was episode 60 of the Leadmore podcast. Thanks, Amy, for coming on, for sharing, and of course, just thanks for being you, for being the incredible, talented designer that you are, but even better, the person and business partner that you've been. Definitely going to miss you. So thanks for listening, everyone. Reminder, we drop new episodes of the Leadmore podcast every single Thursday, and you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. So it's Apple, follow on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it is. Follow, subscribe, like us so other people can find the show. And as always, thank you, take care, and be well.